was a time when Honda made a supercar. Called the NSX, it was the ultimate exercise in simplicity of purpose and delicacy of engineering. It was light on weight but high on power, a 300 horsepower Katana that sliced through the roads, powered by a big V6 and this new thing called VTEC. It was developed by a real F1 driver, arguably the greatest F1 driver of all time, but more importantly, it proved that you could make a supercar that worked. You turned the key and it stayed running. You could go in traffic and it wouldn't overheat, it didn't leak oil. You could even see out of the thing. And now, 25 years later, there's finally a new one, and God, what a gorgeous car it is. Mechanophilia? Google it. It was something like this. Whoa, you can understand. Now, because this car has been in gestation for so long, and because it's also been out in the US for a while now, you're probably already familiar with the specs. A 3.5 litre twin turbocharged V6 coupled with no fewer than 3 electric motors, which is good for a combined output of 565 brake horsepower. Effectively, there's 4-wheel drive because the rear wheels are driven by the engine while the front get an electric motor each, and all the power goes through a 9-speed dual clutch gearbox. Now, to say this thing is fast is stating the outrageously obvious, due to the fact that the electric motors offer instant power and also plug the torque gaps while the gearbox swaps cogs. It can sprint from 0 to 62 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds. 0 to 100 happens in just over 6 seconds, and it'll go all the way on to 191 miles per hour. Give or take, that's pretty much on par with the LaFerrari, the P1 and the 918, and I have to say it has been a long time since I've driven a car that's titillated and terrified me in such equal measure. I think the last one was the radical SR8 VX, and this thing really is on that level of insane. It's the first car I've driven in years that's made me sit back and genuinely think, in the common parlance, F***. Now, while the original NSX was primarily aluminium, this car is instead built around an aluminium space frame with a carbon floor. The side panels are plastic, the bonnet is aluminium, roof, carbon, etc, etc, so this is a very light car. Of course, all the hybrid gear adds in a lot of the weight back, but due to the fact that the electric motors offer genuine, honest-to-God torque vectoring, it feels so light on its feet that it's just insane. The electric motors can also actively juggle and adjust power and torque between the front wheels thousands of times a second under hard cornering, and so you can take corners flat out that would just wipe you out in pretty much any other car. In theory, Honda says that you should be able to keep the car perfectly level under any and all conditions, and in practice, well, yeah, that. It's a slightly different story in the wet or with cold tyres, because with the sheer amount of instant torque available, the car gets slippier than even the most elusive bar of prison shower soap. But in the dry or with warm tyres, it just grips and grips and grips, and then some. It's insane. Now, you've also got a choice of 4 different driving modes. You've got Quiet, which is the most absolute basic mode, and which is handy whenever you're on cold starts and you don't want to vibrate the neighbour's windows. Above that, you've got Sport, then Sport Plus, and finally Track. Now, I could go into the finer details of how these adjust things like turbo boost pressure, throttle response, steering, etc, but really all you need to know is it's a lot like waking up in the morning, then having your cup of coffee, then downing an entire Magnum tin of Monster Energy, and then eating a whole box of Pro Plus pills. Yeah! One thing to note about this car, however, is that everything's by wire. It's drive by wire, throttle by wire, and brake by wire, so that can take a little bit of getting used to. You will need to use more brake pressure than you think to properly slow it down, but it's nothing that you can't get used to after a couple of miles. The steering's direct and super accurate as well, while the giant carbon ceramic brakes bite hard and resist any attempt that I can make at getting them to fade, while the whole car feels that it's just set up with some sort of black magic that means that the speed it can accelerate, decelerate, and change direction is just surreal. In a word, awesome. In In short then, this is a very, very special car. So does the interior have the same sense of drama to match the way it drives? Well, no. But then, is that such a bad thing? After all, there's no silly gull-wing doors to get caught in or anything like that, and visibility all round is good. In fact, the A-pillars in this car are actually thinner than those on the original. The centre console here, which I reckon is a dead ringer for the original NSX, is also fuss-free and easy to use. I can understand that buyers might want their car to look a little bit more special, but then you have to remember that most of your money goes towards the powertrain. There are a couple of things that I really don't like all that much about it though. For a start, these shift paddles are abhorrently plasticky. The sat-nav is kind of Crayola compared to the rest of the car. And the key, no gorgeous machined model key like the original here, apart from the fact that it says NSX on it. It could be for a Jazz or for anything. It's not going to set anybody's knickers alight fishing this out of the bowl at your local key party, put it that way. And then finally, I'm sorry, but the sound. What's the best sounding V6 car currently on sale? Jaguar F-Type? That thing screams and howls and it's baleful, whereas this one just kind of honks along. Of course, you can forgive it for all of that so long as it drives well. And it does. But what about in terms of boot space? Well, don't let anybody ever tell you that supercars can't be practical. I mean, just look at the amount of room in this boot here compared to something like an Audi R8, which is just all engine and no space. This is really, really usable indeed. There's a little bit of a transmission tunnel because the 9-speed gearbox stretches all the way back to the back bumper, but it's more than enough for a few weekend bags, for your shopping or for, yeah. And the price is alright too. In the UK, the NSX starts from around £135,000, slightly less than a Porsche 911 Turbo S and about on par with the Audi R8 V10 Plus. Of course, that still is a lot of money to anybody, but compared to the 1 million plus hybrid hypercars, it's something of a bargain. And of course, this is also how automotive technology becomes democratized, by starting off expensive in halo cars and then slowly trickling down. For example, remember whenever carbon fibre was exclusively used in Formula 1 cars? Or what about the revolutionary all-aluminium construction of the original NSX, which now crops up in all kinds of everyday road cars? Maybe even yours. And yes, while your LaFerraris and your P1s and your 918s and all that sort of thing beat this car to the hybrid halo car punch, this Honda manages to pack hypercar rivaling performance for a fraction of the horsepower and a fraction of the price. So in 25 years' time, will the second generation Honda NSX be remembered as fondly as the original? Well, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. To find out more about this car, click on the Inquire button, or for any other car, visit carkeys.co.uk. And to watch more video reviews, click on one of the links on screen now.